Hello, and welcome back to our podcast, Healing Our Community, with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean.
And today we're talking about on episode 9.
Hold on.
Okay.
We ended the last podcast saying that we were going to go check on our goats having kids.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I just wanted to let you know within an hour of that, we had a little girl and a little boy born. And then a couple of days later, we had 2 more girls and a boy. So we got 5 kids.
Couldn't have timed that any better.
And we'll put some pictures in the comments.
Couldn't have timed that any better. Yeah, so now we have 5 goat kids. And as all of you may know, we have never raised livestock ever in our lives. So this
Very
is
fun, very cool.
First time, and first time being a goat midwife.
Yeah.
Jean was fantastic at it. She did an excellent job.
It was very fun.
Yes. And we will post some of the pictures of our new goat kids. So today we're talking about on episode 9, mental health versus mental illness and why the difference matters between the two of that. You know, it is, it's very important to be able to make that distinction because there's such a huge stigma about mental health, just mental health and mental illness. And I think a lot of times people misconstrue those two terms and they see it as one and the same.
Well, and our world has changed, and so we have so much more information, so much more diagnostic material, and so many more labels. When I was a kid, you were just like, I don't know, that's how Jimmy is. And now it's like, well, they're sensory, they're on the spectrum, they're this, they're that. They have all these labels, which the labels aren't always a bad thing, And so one thing we do know is in the 1970s, the level of anxiety of a psychiatric patient is about the same level as a high school kid right now. So our world has changed a lot.
Yeah, the misconception is that, if you don't have a diagnosis like depression or PTSD or anxiety disorder, that you have good mental health. And that is not the case. Mental health is a spectrum of functioning. It's not just sick versus healthy. It's about your ability to handle stress, to relate to other people, the ability to make choices and good choices for yourself. So if you want to use the analogy of cardiovascular health, all right, everyone knows about taking care of your heart. You don't have to wait until you have a heart attack to take care of your heart or take care of your cardiovascular health. We all know what we should be eating. We all know that we should be exercising, we should be getting enough sleep, and all of that is to take care of our cardiovascular health, our health in general. And so when we talk about mental health, we talk about that whole spectrum of it.
Right. You could have a non-diseased heart or cardiovascular system, but be in better shape than someone who's also has none of those diagnostic things, but is a couch potato.
And so I think that's a really good point too, because it's all specific to the individual. So some person's heart may need more care in certain ways than another person's heart. Right. And so in the same vein, mental health absolutely is a specific individual thing. One thing that we should all understand is that there are 3 pillars to mental health, right? There's emotional well-being. And so that is like how you feel and how you manage those feelings, those emotions. Other people might say or call it emotional intelligence. There's psychological well-being. And so this is how you think and your sense of purpose in life and just your whole mindset in general. And then the third pillar is social well-being. So how do you connect with your community? How do you connect with your support systems? How do you connect with people that you care about in the community?
And just like cardiovascular health, you can do things to make yourself stronger in each of these categories.
Absolutely, right? Like in Delta County specifically, we have witnessed and seen a very strong community. And so that social well-being is pretty strong here, whether you like it or not, there's this community connection that is happening. And so that might be a strength of Delta County, but the emotional well-being, that may be an area that suffers because of this mentality of just toughing it out.
Well, I just want to say something about that social well-being. Everyone appreciates getting a phone call. Everyone appreciates getting invited to something or feeling included or being said hello to. And we don't have control over that, but we do have control over picking up the phone. Is that still a word? Do you still
Well, I
like
guess
it's
you,
not
you
this
pick
kind
up
of
your
you pick
cell
up this phone.
phone.
And being the one to reach out and being the one to be inclusive, that's where you have power and control. And so if you are feeling like your social life might be a little lacking, and we know it's good for us to socialize, there are so many ways in Delta County to do that. There are clubs, there are organizations that help people and give back, and that is so good for us. There is business networking. There's so many ways to get involved. So if you are listening to this and you're feeling pretty isolated, get involved somewhere.
Yeah, and we've talked about that in a previous podcast about
Mhm.
isolation and how that is a big killer, for your own emotional and mental health, right? I think we should define. Hi, it's our doggies joining
Jethro.
in on the podcast. I think we should define what mental health actually is, and the World Health Organization does have a definition of that. It is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes their own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to their community.
Okay.
I think that's a very comprehensive definition of mental health.
Yeah, and I want you to think about going through a life stressor. Something really big happens. Maybe you lose a job. Maybe you have a loss. You find out someone has just passed away. Your brain doesn't function very well. You can't put your thoughts together. You can't remember things you're supposed to do. So when you really think about when is your brain under that amount of stress, and just like cardiovascular and taking a stress test, when we take a stress test, they don't care how fast you go. They don't care how far you go. They care about how quickly can you recover. And if you know what we do when people have a loss, we gather, we make casseroles, we support them, we tell them we're praying for you, we're thinking about you, we show up to funerals, and all of that helps so much for that person going through that grief, even though the longer term stuff is a whole different topic. But in that immediate moment when your brain's not really functioning and you're almost like in a fog, it's really helpful to have people around you. So again, when we're talking about mental wellness, we're talking about how quickly do you recover from those life stressors.
The ability to be resilient.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have a question here. Hang on a second. I can't see it.
I don't have my glasses on.
I know. Let's see. Oh, what is one thing adults can add to the daily routine to stay mentally healthy?
I would say the first 5 minutes of your morning. If you can take the first 5 minutes of your morning and you can sit quietly, if you can find some gratitude for your life, if you can have some appreciation for your relationships, for the roof over your head, for the people in your life, what you're going to do automatically is lower your anxiety and depression, and you're going to lower your set point of being upset later on. And the more you can do that right away in the morning, because our emotional body doesn't really turn on until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so in the early morning, you're more mental. And so it's easier to practice these kind of things right away.
Yeah, I think that's really key. Starting off the morning with gratitude or a sense of gratitude, it really sets things in motion. Because throughout the day, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to become upset or to be pulled off, your trajectory. And so when you have those moments of resetting, then it really helps not only your mental and emotional, but it also gets you in the motion of connecting socially too. So hits all three pillars of mental health. So, one thing that they wanted to also mention is that resiliency is really huge. We started to talk about resiliency in our last podcast, not the last podcast before that, when we were in Alcatraz. We were talking about how staying in the moment was such a huge thing for the people who were incarcerated there. They had to stay in the moment because otherwise they just kind of lost themselves, right?
Mhm.
So being able to be in the moment is a way of being resilient. It gives you the ability to bounce back when you are dealing with really difficult or challenging situations.
If you think about a center point, right, and you find out something upsetting and it pushes you away from the center, you need an equal emotion as far away from the center on the other side. So a lot of times when we're talking about anger, we're also talking about humor. One thing that when I'm in a funk, is that a way to say it?
Yeah.
Anyways,
I
when
guess.
I'm on that side of it, I like to disrupt something in my life. I like to paint. I like to listen to something, get some new ideas into my head, a different way of thinking about things. Maybe talk it out with someone, maybe not. Read something, learn something new, do something different. And that helps me change up my frequency and my energy, because I know that I can't solve the problem when I'm in that bad way.
Mhm.
I can't figure it out. I don't feel better. I have not found any tricks that really help me feel better very quickly. I think you just gotta sit in that. But what does happen is something, right? So maybe you're something's happened and you're kind of fixated on that and you're thinking about that. And then eventually something else happens and you just stop thinking about that thing and you move on to something else without really doing that much. The work that you do to try to do that, I don't know how much it helps in that moment, but knowing it'll shift and knowing you can live through that and knowing you probably shouldn't make any decisions right now, just let yourself sort of uh, self-soothe and sit in that and comfort yourself and be around supportive people.
If we were to go back to the analogy of your physical health, as we mentioned earlier, there are things that you can do to attend to your physical health:
Mm-hmm.
exercise, eating healthy, watching your, salt intake, or getting enough sleep. Like, all of these things are part of that maintenance of good physical health. And so, what you're talking about is the maintenance of good mental health, right? And taking care of that, and making sure that you are dealing with a stressor in a way that you're going to be able to bounce back. Because mental health isn't just about being happy 24/7. That's not the goal here. The goal here is to have the ability to be able to deal with difficult emotions, like the anger styles, like we had talked about in a previous podcast. We don't want those difficult emotions or challenging situations to hijack our life.
Right.
We want to be in control, right? We want to be able to bounce back from those difficult situations. I think you've used in the past the example of a stress test,
Mm-hmm.
right? In that a stress
Right.
test isn't.
Yeah, we just did that.
We just did that. Look at
But
that.
one thing I wanted
I'm
to
being
talk
redundant
about,
now.
one thing I want to talk about is what if you're not the person going through something, but you're the person who knows someone else is going through something? What can you do for them, right? And a lot of times we might err on the side of doing nothing because we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. And you're right. You don't know what to say, and that's okay. But what you can do is you can ask, can I do something for you? Can I hug you? Make sure you ask that, because some people don't really like that. If make sure you get permission, but sometimes that can do so much for someone. You can always say, I'm thinking about you, or I'm praying for you. I'm sorry you're going through what you're going through. And those might sound like really cliche things, but you'd be surprised how much of a difference that makes for the person experiencing that. Just being like, I see you, I know you're hurting, and leave it at that. You're not fixing anything. You're not, I promise the worst thing you could do is say something dumb.
Or to ignore it,
Yeah,
to
or
act
ignore
like
it.
nothing
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even though the person might slap a smile on their face and seem like everything is fine, just saying, hey, I'm just, how are you doing?
Mhm.
Or if you want to talk, just let me know. Just being there and letting them know that there's a door open can do the world for them, right? It can really change a person's perspective, because as we talked about before, isolation isolation is a killer. And so how many people out there are really just isolated within themselves, within their own head? And if you are able to reach out to them, that provides that social well-being that's going to really help them in their mental health.
And all the things we're talking about, none of this has to do with mental illness. All of
Right.
these things have to do with being a human being and being on this planet. We all go through trauma. We all go through tragedy. We all go through loss. We all have stuff happen.
Sadness, worry.
Yep. Those are really normal emotions. It doesn't mean that you have a mental illness. That's important to know the difference of.
Absolutely. Well, I want to remind you again that, we do this podcast every Wednesday at 12:15. This is a live podcast. It is on our Facebook page, KBH, and it's also on our YouTube page as well, KBH YouTube page. So you can always send in a question or type in a little comment or any suggestions on other topics that you'd like to hear more about. And we are able to see that in real time. Yeah.
So we're actually in our office right now, which is on
KBH Center
Palmer
right now.
Street. So this is one of the stained glass here. So we're on a little tiny computer, which is why we can't see your questions. But it still works.
Yeah, this is a stained glass that Jean made. She actually custom made these. There's two windows here, two stained glass windows, and they're beautiful. They're huge. And I watched her go through this whole process of making that thing and then having to transport it from our house here to install it. That was quite a endeavor too. But
so even though you're not being diagnosed with something, that doesn't mean you can't benefit from getting help. And if you're feeling like you're kind of struggling and things are going on a little bit longer than what would be an average or normal thing to get through something, that means you're in the middle of what I would call like a spiritual crisis, a spiritual depression. Your life is calling out for change. And it's okay at that point then to reach out. I would say most of the people I work with are in that category. Their life is just kind of stuck and they want to move forward and they're not really sure how. So it doesn't have to be some grand event or some big thing. It can just be, I'm just don't feel like I'm thriving as much as I could be in life. And you'd be surprised at how much doing some of this work can help you.
So if you have any other questions or need to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at kbhcenter.org. And this whole podcast is designed to really keep the communication open, to talk about mental health, and specifically to talk about how mental health is here in Delta County and how it impacts all of us. Until next time, let's keep that conversation going in Delta County. Thank you.